welcome to this next meeting of the Municipal Buildings Blue Ribbon Committee. I think we have quorum because I count as a member, so I think we're fine to move forward with approval of the minutes. But I want to start the meeting first with introducing our new Deputy City Manager, Carl Weber, who's joining us today. And I want to go around and, for those of you who are here, just introduce yourself quickly because Carl's new and I want to make sure that he knows everyone in the committee, and we'll do that instead of taking the roll.
Renee Plummer. I live here, work here.
And I introduced myself, Rick Chelman.
Mary Lou McElwain, and I have introduced myself too. Nice to see you.
And John O'Leary, and I've known Carl for 20 some odd years.
This is great.
So we've met.
Okay, good. And you know.
Yep, Joe Almeida, Facilities Manager.
Fantastic. And did everyone have a chance to see the minutes from the last meeting?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
We got it.
Second.
Any changes, any comments?
Nice job.
Thank you.
Good. All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The minutes are approved. I want to take this opportunity to welcome our consultants, JSA, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves as well to the group and provide some background information on their experience in this process, and then we'll talk some about the scope of work.
Excellent. So my name is North Sturdivant. I've been with JSA for almost 30 years. JSA has been a leading architecture firm in the city of Portsmouth since 1980. We turned 45 a week ago Monday, which was coincident with the official retirement of my partner, Todd Hansen, who we can assure you is still in town and still working with us and will be involved in this project as we move forward. He's been a recognized leader in this town in terms of his public contributions. John mentioned his work on the library, his work as a leader in the Access Navigators program, and as a leader of our firm. So he is a big influence on our firm and on me personally, and will definitely be kept in mind moving forward. We have done quite a bit of work in the city, and we've recently been fortunate to do a lot of work with the city. And I say that with all candor, that even a job like 4 Mile Island, for Tree Island. The nuclear disaster.
You doing that? I didn't even know you were doing that.
It's 1 mile past 3 miles,
So what happened?
It melted down. For Tree Island, where Joe called us up and said, "Hey, we're kind of in trouble. We've got a certain amount of time to spend this money that the government has handed out. Can you please help us?" Absolutely. We are part of this city. We love working with the city and in the city. And I personally can say that I've lived here. I know the warts, and there's a couple. The process that we saw with this project, which is not just a police station, which is huge, but an entire municipal complex that allows us to take some opportunities to really take a hard look at the facility as it coexists together. There may be some opportunities for efficiencies in staff and shared resources and so forth. We'll explore that as we go through our initial programming and final programming. We're here at day 1, a lot of days of work. We envision something in the neighborhood of 6 months to get us to the point where everybody's in love with us and with the ideas that we've put together to make this thing happen. It's a 2-step contract. The first that we are moving forward with now has basically a no harm, no foul, get out of jail. So if it turns out that we're not as we expect to be working effectively together, If it's not working out, either party can say, you know what, this has been a great experience, but somebody else can finish it. Like I said, I don't anticipate that being the case. I know you guys, I know people on council. I'm glad to be meeting some of you guys for the first time. Got a tour with Chief Newport. Initially, I've never been through the process as a customer, if you will. I like to keep it that way. But I'm keenly aware of the issues that this police force is living with in this facility. And we're behind the idea of making everything better. As a citizen of Portsmouth, which I was for a number of years, I'm a strong believer in public buildings that people are proud of and want to be part of. You know, hey, this is our city. This is what our municipal complex looks like. Right now, when I went to register a car, when I went to pay a tax bill or anything like that, I didn't feel particularly proud. I had a mailbox I could drop things in to save a 52-cent stamp, but that sort of public-facing side of service to the general public, which you see a lot in the police department, as I've seen as on the streets of town during the October, the Halloween parade, during any of these big events, the police are a strong public-facing presence of the city, and the city looks really good when these events are happening. So I'm really proud to be here. I'm emotionally invested in this project, and we haven't even started yet. So that's kind of where I am. I will turn it over to Richard, who is my partner at JSA, and he's really so much better at organizing things and getting stuff put together, because I can be, whatever, I can flow. Richard, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, and maybe we can go through our little slideshow.
So for those of you I haven't met, Richard Martz, Principal and Project Manager with JSA. I feel we put together a great team here, both internally, then with our partners with ADG, who are a consultant and our subject matter experts when it comes to the police side of the facilities. In addition, we have a number of sub-consultants that will assist us in making this a complete holistic design, so that at the end of this, we have a good understanding of, we've covered all the scope, we have a clear understanding of the cost, so that the city has all the information they need to make the appropriate decision for the city, whatever that may be.
What it may be is that we'll be awarded the second part of the contract.
That is correct.
All of our goals.
Yeah.
Okay, next slide.
These right now, or the next one now?
That'd be great. So working through this first phase, there's, call it two primary parts to that that we want to discuss today. First part of that is the project of engagement, the representation, how we interface with all of you here, the Blue Ribbon Committee, how we interface with the council, how we interface with the public at large. And then the next part, talking through the actual work steps itself, the programming, the planning, what that will specifically look like, and then ultimately how that schedule plays out. So let's talk through the engagement. The Blue Room Committee is a crucial asset to making this project happen and making sure that we have all the feedback needed. So the way that we're imagining this working is that we're going to be present at every Blue Ribbon Committee meeting throughout this whole phase. Unless you tell us you don't want us there, we will be here reporting you back, updating you as we work through all the steps. We see that as you're the first curators before we go in front of council. So the first, for example, when we're going through the initial programming, we're going to be working through the we'll be reconciling the staffing studies on the police side of things, and we need to start fresh the staffing study and programming for the rest of the municipal complex. We will be reviewing those first passes with you, second passes with you, before then that goes in front of council to then review and get their feedback. I say that all just to reiterate that you're our first step as we work through everyone. We see meeting with council for approximately 6 meetings or so. We will want to meet with the council initially to get their thoughts, to get their feedback, what are the preconceived notions they have, what are the things that they are most concerned about, most excited about, what are the opportunities that they see. Then we see meeting with them at the end of programming, and then as we work through the design, and then ultimately final cost and estimates. On the public engagement side of things, it's important that we facilitate a process that the greater public at large can engage. We see this happening in a couple different ways. Firstly, through the initial programming process, we want to have 2 facilitated sessions here at City Hall with small groups of people to get their feedback and comments. What do you see at Town Hall? How do you use it? What are the things you would like to see? Make sure that we understand what the public wants out of their space. Further along in the design process, when we're at the point that we're presenting concepts, massings, elevations, layouts, we want to have another engagement with them here at City Hall to get their feedback, make sure that everyone is proud of what they're seeing and is going to be happy with it. And then throughout the process, we will facilitate feedback with the public that would happen not here in meetings, but whether that's comment cards or flash vote, a way that people can engage who might not be able to be present at a meeting at City Hall for whatever reasons.
I think it's important to emphasize that we see the Blue Ribbon Committee as really curators of that process, so we don't think it's appropriate for us to say, here's the 5 designs to the general public, having not shared it with the owner side. So just, I know Richard did say that earlier, but that's a pretty important part of the process as we see it.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Can we have
Yeah,
dialogue as we
we
go
can,
along?
yeah. We definitely-
You know, my only comment with regards to, you know, what you just went through with regards to the committee and the council and the public engagement, I'm gonna take this, and I know it's on your mind, the employees. You know, they're the ones who work here every day. They know the flow of the building. Those of us who sit on a Blue Ribbon Committee or on a city council, or frankly, people in the public, we have our own perception. We don't deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So in my opinion, the most important input that you're gonna get is from the people who work in the building on a daily basis.
John, that is a perfect segue to our
To the next slide.
Okay, good.
So thank you. So I just talk about the sort of project representation, the public engagement side of it. This is call it the working part of it, what our workflow, how we're actually getting to these conclusions to present to you. The first part of that is understanding the spatial needs of the building. The police station has gone through that a fair amount. We have what ADG has done in the past. We have what Matrix Consulting Group prepared. We know that one of the first orders of business is to reconcile those two to come to a consensus and also compare that to the existing space needs today. So that's one important chunk to work through. Then there's the municipal side of things, which has not happened, or certainly not since 2014 or so. So one of the first things that we'll start to do is the spatial needs assessment from the municipal side. That's going to involve an extensive amount of meetings. First thing we need to do is collect all the existing materials we can from Joe and Peter to wrap our heads around it. We'll be scheduling a series of meetings with all of the departments, and the way we see doing that is first we'll issue questionnaires to the department heads with specific questions so that they can start to think about their needs, their staff, their space. We can get our hands on what is the actual staffing to date. And then we see having at least 2 meetings with each department to talk through the questions, understand their flows, their critical adjacencies, to make sure that ultimately the space that they get works for them, and works most importantly. And also, how can we find synergies between different departments, make sure people are where they need to be. And ideally, some of those more public-facing interfaces, getting your license, paying your taxes, are able to be in a more prominent, easy-to-access location so that it's a little more generous to the citizens of the city. That will be that's the first big chunk. Concurrently with that, we'll be tackling 2 other things. One is our preliminary technology review. That is going to be working both with the city or the municipal side of things and the police to understand campus security, IT, AV needs as a whole. The third item that again happens concurrently is existing facility review, and that's really focused on the nuts and bolts, the infrastructure of the building. In 2014 was the ISIS report, understanding what has been checked off that list since then, what are the things that you guys know about already, having been in the facility so long, meeting with you to understand all of those needs. On the system side, having our engineers go through the building, assess the system so we know what's good, what's not, what needs to happen. And then the same thing on the life safety side of things. We're walking through ourselves with our code consultant and with building inspections to identify what are the big picture issues that need resolved that we need to consider for this project. Things like exit stairs, which we know there's some historically nice but not code compliant ones that exist. Quite dated. That's the first big chunk of things, and those are all happening concurrently. When we get to the end of that, that's at the point where we can start to understand our spatial needs and start to actually lay out things with some accuracy and understanding. The first step of that will be conceptual site master planning. That's going to be space planning, color blocks, adjacencies, making sure we know what are the square footages, what needs to be next to what, how will everything fit. At that point, we won't be thinking too much about massing. We'll always be thinking about it, but our focus will really be on space planning and adjacencies. We'll get that to a point where we have options that we feel comfortable with the square footages that we're all agreed on. And then we'll start to conceptual building design. That's where we'll start to produce renderings, massing, make sure we understand what is this going to look like, how is this going to affect use from various parts of the city, next door, and start to work through what are the systems going to be, what is the scope, how is this going to be built, so that at the end of that phase, we have a series of narratives and a series of drawings that we can give to our cost estimator so that they can put probable cost to this. So at the end of step 6, we have 3 designs. Here's what they would look like, here's how they're going to work, here's the cost to them, so that then the city can give comment, make informed decisions, and hopefully move forward with a project that we're all proud of. Approximately schedule-wise, this is how we see all of it playing out. We're imagining that these basically August, September are going to be focused on those first 3 steps, the programming side of things, reconciling the police space planning, understanding building infrastructure, getting all our square footages and pieces and parts in place. Then about a month and a half for the master planning, space planning, another month and a half for building design, narrative systems, how this is going to be built, and then a couple of weeks, a month for our estimator to actually work through what is this going to cost, the feedback that's going to need to happen. Ultimately, the idea being that in February 2026, we're in a place that we can present those options for the city to make a decision on. I made a point earlier about how we proceed interfacing with the Blue Ribbon Committee and the public. So the top 3 lines show roughly that schedule. I know the Blue Ribbon Committee meets roughly bi-weekly, and we imagine that cadence continuing throughout. Council meetings, we see some initial meetings this coming month to get the initial feedback, their thoughts, their preconceptions, and then probably coming back around end of September, October, when we've gotten through all of the programming so that we can review what we'll have discussed at that point, our conclusions. And then likewise at the end of each of those design phases, if you will, master planning, conceptual design. I think that about covers the general summary of things.
Not the first phase.
Of the first phase,
Right.
yeah, to be clear, this first phase is all about getting to a basis of design. That's our goal, is have 3 options, get to a basis of design, so that hopefully the city will then choose to move forward with one of those to turn into a construction project, at which point, ideally, us will move forward doing construction drawings and moving forward with construction, design, bid, build, so on and so forth.
And I think at that time, there's still a lot to do after. I mean, it's not just, okay, take option 3, we love it, go. One of the biggest struggles we're gonna face on this project is the phasing. An active police department, active city hall, you're not gonna build it on Fridays after 1, right? We're gonna have to do a lot of hard thinking and make some difficult choices about how to temporarily house people and the best way to do that. So that will not be addressed in any detail in this, but just sort of a loose understanding of how we might proceed, because that'll impact how the mechanical systems are developed, because you have to make distributions across and up, or across and down, or just, there's a lot we have to marry together.
Those considerations will be made.
Yeah. And we're not afraid of that.
Yeah.
So,
We've done that plenty. It's
Yeah.
something we're comfortable with. It's difficult, but we're comfortable.
Well, you did it for us recently at Community Campus with an occupied building, significant renovation that impacted everyone in the building, so.
yeah, with nap time.
Yeah, with nap times you have to work around from the school, yeah.
Did you get nap time?
No. Only the kids upstairs got shot. So yeah, the contractor literally had to stop work every day at 12:45 for the 1 o'clock nap times, so they could pick it up again. But generally, they'd make it up by coming in super early and either finishing their day in time for nap time and having, painters might come back later in the day. They sort of mix that, so.
I like that. It makes it a community. It's a big family.
Sleeping? Nap time?
Just the nap time and the fact that they had to stop and
Yeah.
always take care of the kids first, yeah.
Is your contract focused on the existing building initially? In other words, inside the existing building envelope, or do you see that as one of the things you look at with possibility of additions, large or small?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. We're approaching this with no real preconceived notions. I think the idea is we are stewards of the funds that are going to be made available for the project. So we have to balance that. I mean, it'd be really easy to phase if you said, let's double the size of the building and move people in and then, whatever. But it's going to have to balance somewhere in between. And if the facility as it stands can accommodate what we need, and we don't know if that's true or not, I think that the one area that's going to be very interesting to me as we get through this is, I believe when the last team looked at the police department occupying this complex, there's a borderline that was drawn that may coincide with the existing outline of the police department's footprint. I don't know if that's the case or not, but I have a feeling maybe it did, because it wasn't really looking at the city hall as a whole. So it may be that those hard borders erode a little bit, and we, sort of move things around that create greater efficiencies. We take advantage of maybe more space on the second floor here, whatever. So no preconceived notions. We need to really get that analysis done of reconciling what we saw in the matrix report and ADG's report. And there's some differences, and I think there's some, I had some questions going through the matrix report, specifically related to how they were thinking about bathrooms, but because that can add up pretty quickly. But we'll go through that process, and then it's that and looking at this building, and it's not an amoeba. It's something within 4 walls. If we got to push it out, if we got to add a stair tower because what's down here is not cool, that might be the easiest thing to do, a low cost impact. But long-winded response. That's a great question, and we're going in without any real preconceived notions.
So for those who you don't remember or realize, that exterior stairwell, which is a metal graded stairway, which we put a cover over, the hospital put a cover over, it's not an interior stairwell. It meets node codes. It really is relatively unsafe. So that's what North is referring to.
I knew what he was referring.
I knew you did. The general public may not have been aware.
Yeah, but
It's not
that's,
something-
that will be what's quoted, it's not safe.
So,
We haven't seen the ISIS report, but it's a, it's a facility condition assessment with facility condition indices. And that was probably on that list, and it may not
It
be
was,
something that got
yeah.
checked on.
I've looked
So,
through some of the
One of the things I just mentioned is the fact is that having been through numerous projects like this, people like to be able to visualize things. One of the things I might suggest as you go through this process is when you come up with a concept, if you can direct people into an example of that concept. For instance, the other day I was in a town hall, and it's a brand new building, so it's a whole different set of rules. But, as Councilor Cook had brought up earlier on, I walked in the front door, tax collectors, everything was, within 12 feet of the front of the building. And it kind of brought home what she had talked about, whereas people have to wander through the building here. When you come up with a concept, if you can point us to examples where we can go and visualize, not in concept, but in bricks and mortar, what it's gonna look like, that's always helpful.
And we work in 3D modeling anyway.
Yeah.
So if you just want a quick snapshot of what something might look like or feel like, that's pretty easy to accomplish in at least line models. Rendering them up, whatever, can be difficult, but no, and as a customer here, and it wasn't like the third time was any easier than the first time. It was like I forgot how hard it was to get my license plate stamp. I was like, what's up with this? Yeah, and it's a big, it's a big city. I mean, it's not a huge city, but it's a big city for around here, and so more people are needed to accommodate the public needs. So it's not like walking into the town hall in Boscawen where everything is there.
Yeah.
But that's easy because it's like 2 people.
Yeah.
But I think it needs to feel that accessible.
Any questions? To follow up on John's comment about involving the employees, Matrix did a survey and I was surprised that only 55% of the employees
saw that.
responded to that.
I saw that.
It would seem, considering the scope of this project,
Yeah,
that
that-
we would do better.
Honestly, didn't surprise me. I
Oh,
mean, it's lower than you would like, but I have a feeling that I've probably been asked a lot of questions over time. That these, and the other thing that struck me looking at at least the makeup of the police department, there's a lot of seniority in this department. And so with age comes a little bit of jaundice. I'm not gonna answer some stupid, that's kind of what I was seeing.
but it
It's
wasn't
like-
just the police department,
Did they ask the
survey,
entire?
it was
I thought it was
the
just the
whole
police
building, wasn't it?
No,
I thought it was just the
No,
police.
Just the
Just-
police
just the
department?
police,
I
yeah.
thought it was the
Just
whole
police
building.
That's what I
Just the
read.
police.
Yeah.
So that was my
Anyway, I thought 55% was low.
guess. But I think those that cared enough to respond are probably pretty representative of what was there.
I'd add too, I think by distributing some initial questions to get the juices flowing and then meeting in person, by having those meetings in person with each department, we're ensuring that we're going to get benefit of comments from everyone. We can't just say, well, we sent it out to you, you didn't respond, too bad. No.
And I think a part of that too is patrol officers not spend the majority of the time outside of the
Right.
building, so
True.
their input is not as big
That's a
as
pretty
the
significant
people who are
percentage of
outside.
it.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I've also been on projects where it takes a long time to get things done, particularly in the public sector, as you know. And people don't necessarily believe that survey is gonna lead to something concrete. So I think that's part of what our objective is in our public interfaces. We really are talking about something that's real. So help us make the real work by contributing. This is not a pretend,
Yeah.
if we were to have the perfect police department on, cloud nine and, unicorns flying around and stuff. This is a survey about a real facility that's gonna be working for the public and for the staff that's here, that are hardworking public servants. And, we'll try to make sure that the belief in the project is gonna be a big driver in terms of that contribution, because without that contribution, the project isn't as good. That's right.
You mentioned 3D modeling, which of course I know you meant building, but this is also a topographically interesting piece of property.
Yes, it is.
How,
Subterranean topography as well.
no kidding. Yeah, little I've heard, it sounds like it's somewhat hard in places under there.
It's hard under the generator.
Yeah. Is that something JSA does in-house, or do you have outside?
We're working with Ty and Bond, who's a civil engineer.
Okay.
One of the proposals that we have for the city, they have done some survey work on this site, but they haven't done all of it. And we really want to understand the topography of the entire site. We'd also love to know, I don't think we have a strong sense of the geotechnical subterranean side.
There were some geotechnical
They
work
might have been
done.
focused on,
It focused on the front parking lot out there and the back parking lot. So, but it'll give us, some data points relative to ledge profile, so.
so I'm good friends with Peter Middleton, and he put in the generator back there. And he said the ledge was the most incredible material he'd ever seen.
It's polished.
Isn't that wonderful?
Blue salt.
Yeah, it's a shale, isn't it?
It's hard.
It's a blue, yeah, it's a salt of some sort, so it's hard.
I put in a sewer connection at my house on Highland Street, and I had to call in Mac Construction. Jim Toes wanted to know. He said, the only guy that has the equipment big enough for your 20 feet of pipe is this guy, Bob Mack. So, yeah, I'm familiar with how hard the rock can be.
And there is a psychology quietly about when you add in the tax collector and people walking in. They're not happy because they're gonna write a check, so make it so easy for them to walk in, write that check right there. There's, so it's like, well, at least, I don't have to go.
When we were
ahead and go
designing the Foundry Garage offices, public interface and interface with angry public was actually high on the minds of the people that operate there. So you want it to seem welcoming, but at the same time be hardened enough that if somebody misbehaves, it's,
So you put the bulletproof glass in.
well, it's also, isn't it an advantage to have the entire police force next door within striking distance of I think there's some real win-wins with having so much of the public service here on one site. But you're right, there's lighting, there's the finishes you do, the quality of space. All these things are things that we believe in terms of how people respond to things emotionally. I wouldn't say, going to pay your tax should be fun.
No, but make it easy.
But yeah, make it easy.
And making it easy, obviously the ADA accessibility of this building is not good.
So Todd is, I've learned so much from that guy, because we're taught the books. ADA is a law of the land and all that. It's a minimalist approach to compliance. But in terms of feeling welcoming, it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. You've got to think about design universally. Todd has pounded that in my brain for 10 years.
It can also destroy that public appeal factor you were mentioning earlier, the pride of a building. It can take away from a lot of.
It's a tough
if
entry
it's not done
sequence.
right.
Yeah, it's a tough entry sequence. You cross a driveway that can be pretty active sometimes. So you're thinking about not getting killed, and then getting into a lobby. You can't tell which door is going to open. There's a little glass door in front of you that says "Do not use," and then you look around and see a stair to come up to not much. So, a couple of displays from the treaty, and, if you don't know where you're going, it can be, it doesn't feel welcoming. And we also know that things cost money, and there are ways to address that without spending a ton of money, but just spending it well.
Yes.
So I have two questions for you. The first is, because we haven't done a study really of staffing on the municipal side, aside from the police department, we can't as a committee really be asking the city manager about anticipated changes in staffing behavior, say working from home, or who needs to be in the office, who needs an office space, who doesn't need an office space, all of those things. Is that going to be part of your?
We would be asking those questions, and we would be asking those questions primarily of the department leadership. So if it's something that, if it's an issue of Karen not having time for it, I have a feeling she'd want to have more people in her group engaged. But in terms of that forecast, and they were looking at things like population trends and forecasting, criminal intent, and I don't know what they were.
So, I can plug in a little bit on this. We envision that, we're gonna be using them as a resource to have this as kind of a, dialogue internally to figure out how we're gonna structure things. Because there are pieces that could be moved relatively easily, but there are goals from an organizational standpoint, trying to make sure the connectivity and make sure the communication is really there, and that we don't wanna necessarily remove certain people or certain groups farther away because it's less, you have that less that interaction.
Right.
So the way we envision doing it is we would have the input from them, would have the data, and then we would sit down with senior staff and talk about, what are the logical things, what are our goals, what are we trying to accomplish relative to, policy goals that the council has set out and things like that.
Yeah, and one of the things that's difficult about an existing building is, we have columns everywhere. There's 4 columns in the ante room. Don't ask me why, I don't think we'll ever know. But still, if you're designing what's effectively an office building, design it in a way where it has some flexibility, so there can be departmental growth or shrinking. As technology advances, maybe you need fewer people doing something. The comments about file storage in the police department, that's the same as true as office building space. The remote working thing, that's a really good question, because we in the private sector are living with that a lot. And I'd be interested to hear what they feel about that. We're working with Haven right now, and their on-site staff that are there all the time, it's relatively few. And they have a lot of hotel spaces, which I noticed the police department, there was a discussion about that for the patrolmen supporting. To just have a place to go, you can sit down and do what you need to do and get back on the street. So we'll have to look at some of the technologies that are available to help facilitate that.
Yes, thank you. I know that it's challenging because we have staff that have to be in meetings, but then we have staff that don't necessarily. And so I don't know what that looks like. I know that the city manager does, and her leadership team would know. And so I think that that's important for this committee to understand, because when we're projecting out long-term, things will shift. And we have already seen that shift in the last 5 years. So we might have a better idea now than we would have 5 years ago of what that looks like.
Yeah, maybe it's a good thing that this didn't get going in 2014, because a lot changed in 2020 with how people view the workplace. Yeah.
And then my second question is around this, around the financial projections. As a city councilor, of course, this is what I'm thinking about, is the financials. When you have the different plans, I think the critical thing is not just having options in place, but also having phased financial options.
Mm-hmm.
So having that phasing, and maybe not just, this is the overall total, but what does the phased total look like? So, if you did this plan, you'd have to do this phase first, this phase, and so you start with phase 1 and it costs X amount, because it really impacts the way the budget works on the city side as far as the CIP budget. And so And phasing really helps us better afford major projects. So I think that's
So I think, I
critical.
mean, I think it's important to look at the end result that everybody is happy with. And I think there can be, at a high level, something that says to the effect, do the police department first, do half of the, do the tower over here, that have a couple of menu items. At a high level, I think we could probably do that in our estimating. But when we get down to the stuff that I was saying we can't do now until we get a CM on board, is that minutia of not how much are you paying for it at any given time, but how are you moving people around and keeping the building safe while it's occupied. Yeah.
That's good.
But I think that's right, because it may turn out, we come up with a number that's the number, and these are all hypotheticals, so don't.
Don't say it.
Don't say it. If you don't wanna say it in front, don't say it.
Say this plan that we all love is XXX. We can afford XX right now. This is what you can do for XX. This is what the third X will cost you if you do it later, because it won't be the same. Maybe it's X and a half, or maybe it's just Y. But understand, because we have to be stewards of the city's, resources, right? So in the end, that's your job. You got to figure
I
out
know, it's
how to deliver to the public
Money.
and how to pay for what the public expects you to put together.
exactly, exactly. That's the important piece for me, so.
So it will be no more than XXX. And if you tell me I've only got 2X, we can figure out how to make it 2X.
And that's why you wanna make that tax store right there, so they can pay their taxes and she can say, yes, we're gonna do this.
When we get to those
The assessor's
options-
office needs to be bulletproof.
Yeah,
Right.
really true. Really true.
when we get to those options that we're going to estimate and we have an understanding both of like phasing, if you were to do it all at once, that's also the time that we can decide, you know what, we think we want to price this as a whole, and if we were to break this up into a series of phases over however many years, we would do it here, here, and here. And so when we have our estimator estimate accordingly, we're all gonna be the same page of what those phases are gonna be. We're not gonna decide that in a vacuum.
Thank you.
And strangely enough, we've been really lucky recently. We've had, the vet's home came in under budget, and we had to go back, actually Senator Shaheen helped us. We had to go back to the government and get permission to keep the low bid, because it was 10% below what was authorized by the VA to build the building.
Wow.
So I won't say that that would happen here, but it's kind of weird.
It's interesting.
These things go sometimes.
Keep my fingers crossed. Any other
Which
questions?
makes an X.
Yeah, exactly. Other questions from anyone? No? Okay.
Are you accepting community questions?
We're gonna take public comment, but we're gonna go on, we'll finish up, we have one more issue to discuss really quickly, and I don't even know if there are any questions on it, I just put it on the agenda in case there were, and then we'll take public comment, so, if I can ask you to stick around for a few minutes.
Absolutely.
The next item on our agenda was, are there any additional comments or questions on the staffing and facility analysis now that people have had a little more time to digest it? I wanted to make sure that we answered anything if there was anything else.
Not for me.
Good? All right. In that case, we'll just go ahead and open it up to public comment.
Want to bring them back?
Yeah, that works. If you have comments or questions, feel free to come forward, state your name and your city, and happy to hear from you.
Come forward.
Yeah, come up and have a seat. The microphone's here in the ceiling so people can hear better if you're at the table.
I don't know if I need to read all of this. My name is Kirsten Hunter. I am a resident in Portsmouth. I've lived here since 2010. I also serve on the co-ministry team at South Church in downtown Portsmouth. I really appreciate the magnitude of the project you all are endeavoring to do. I also 100% agree the police department needs new facility. I'm on board with the general sort of need and importance of this. I interact with the Portsmouth Police Department on a somewhat regular basis through just community things that are happening, people in crisis. I've always appreciated the police department and how they approach their work. I understand, and I'm trying to sort of catch up on where you are, what you've sort of already established and where you're going, and I see that a lot of this is still taking shape. But it seems like you've already kind of confirmed projections around police department growth. And I'm particularly, I'm just wondering about what I understand in terms of staffing increases that are a part of this project, that you are considering a projected increase over the next 10 years from 64 officers to 110, which is a 70% staffing increase. I don't know if that's accurate. That's what I've heard.
I comment on that?
Yeah.
So I think you have what those numbers are representing as total number of employees, not police officers. That 64 is probably closer to the number of police officers. We're budgeted for 70 or 68, and 110 is total employees.
Going from 64 employees to 110 employees?
We already, that's including police officers and administrative staff.
So
like
over the next
total-
10 years, what is the growth in the staffing
I think
projections?
that's, if you look at the matrix study that just came out, I think it was going from somewhere approximately, and I don't know off the top of my head, of 100, if you say it's 110 there, to like 117, something to that matter.
Okay,
Total employees, not just police officers.
okay, so just an increase of 6 or so positions.
It's not a big number. Well,
Okay.
with their dispatch recommendations, it was a bigger number.
Uh-huh.
Just like an additional police officers over that 10-year span, they were saying 5 police officers.
Yeah.
And then there was some administrative staff outside of dispatch, there was like an additional 3 or 4 positions. Dispatch recommendation was like another 15 employees.
So I'm hoping, especially the city council, but everyone that is involved in decisions about sort of what's projected and what we're building for in this facility are also thinking about the limited resources we have townwide. Like just last week, we saw hours cut in our library. Our library serves an incredibly important community function, a multitude of important community functions, but particularly for at-risk populations in our community. The library is such a critical space. It helps alleviate pressure on the police department to have a library with ample hours. So we're pulling back hours there. We just are cutting 2 bus lines in the city. Like, there are really critical social services that we're losing funding for. And I'm conscious of the magnitude of the cost that the city's gonna be facing. I just wanna make sure that we're thinking holistically about community need as we're moving forward. And certainly it's important to resource our police department, but I hope we aren't gonna be adopting sort of the wider national trend toward excessively funding police and sort of excessively leaning on police to serve community need, because our community needs are best served in a much more wider umbrella. So that was what I wanted to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else here for public comment? Come up.
Hi, I'm Klein. I was born and raised in Portsmouth, graduated Portsmouth High School, but now I live in Northampton. First, just thank you so much for coming. I'm glad that you guys are gonna be coming to all the meetings. I thought what you had to say about the project was really thoughtful, really appreciated your work on community campus, and I'm glad that you're working with Haven. That's awesome. I had a couple of concerns, mostly directed towards North. Sorry, just you were gonna be here. I think most of it boils down to, you're a member of AIA, correct?
I'm not.
You're not?
Richard is.
Richard, okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
But many of your members are AIA.
Oh, yeah.
affiliated, okay. So AIA has a code of ethics with disciplinary action, including like removal from membership. here's just a few of the quotes from their code of ethics. Members are compelled to enhance and facilitate human dignity and the health, safety, and welfare of the individual and the public. They're required to uphold human rights in all their professional endeavors, and also are required to not knowingly design spaces intended for torture, including indefinite or prolonged solitary confinement. I think it's really easy in a room of decision makers and leaders to talk about a beautiful facility and expanding police operations in the abstract. And I think in terms of things like ADA compliance and going above and beyond for disabled residents, I think that's really important. I want to make sure that municipal staff outside of police have all the resources they need to be able to govern the city effectively and serve residents. But the work the police are doing is really damaging to public safety. There are studies from researchers that
Sorry, could you say that again?
really damaging to public safety. So UCLA, UMass Amherst, the Yale School of Medicine, and others have researched incarceration. I mean, incarceration has been researched extensively in this country because we are such an outlier in police violence, mass incarceration, all the above. Us and the Philippines are the only countries with for-profit bail systems, which creates an industry out of incarceration. But the research around family members who are incarcerated, which would be happening right over there, is that when someone is put in jail or prison, each one of their family members lose about 2.6 years of life expectancy. So that's, let's say you get arrested for drug possession. That's your daughter, your son, your mother, your sister, all lose 2.6 years of life. And that doesn't include other forms of police violence. In Portsmouth specifically, the police department put out their report for accreditation, their COLEA report in 2023. By their own data and by US government census data about Portsmouth, police arrest Black residents at a rate about 6 times higher than their white neighbors. So I guess my question is, how would JSA stay, or members of JSA, stay in compliance with AIA Code of Conduct or Code of Ethics with all of these, not to mention the transfer of inmates from our jails to ICE, which has been doing indefinite detention, has been sending people to concentration camps, and has been torturing inmates.
Yeah, so that's an extremely broad question.
Yeah.
And I understand I'm responding as a designer because that's, the obligation is to design buildings that are good for people, right? I mean, and that's, you don't endanger people and so forth. I do know there are holding facilities here and that there are scenarios where good police work involves bringing people into the station, putting them into a holding cell. Extending beyond into the justice system and the courts and so forth, that's way beyond anything that we're trying to do here. And I respect everything you're saying, but we are going to design a building that works for the people that use this building, and that does include the police force, the citizens of the city, and visitors to the city and the people that work here.
Do you have any comment on the fact that the police are arresting Black people at a rate 6 times higher than white people?
I have not heard that statistic in Portsmouth. I've heard higher numbers elsewhere in the country.
6 times is crazy.
I have no comment on that. I'm
It's from the
afraid I
police's
just,
own data and census data, widely respected.
that's fine. I haven't read it and I
Sure.
don't know enough to comment. And certainly from the standpoint of what does that mean for a community or society as a whole, I think that's way beyond.
I don't think it's way beyond. I think it happens right over there.
You keep on saying, where is over there? I don't know
Just
what you're
the
talking
police facilities.
So- I think it's really important to remember the scope of this committee's work, because no one here who's sitting on the committee, except the chief of police, is an expert in policing. That is not what we do. And I think that your concerns are best addressed to the police commission, because they actually have the authority to make policy for the
Well,
police department.
JSA also has the option of pulling out of a contract that involves increasing police facilities. That's the other side
Well,
of it.
I
So-
can guarantee you that we do not plan to pull out of contract here. This is a very important one. And there's operational things. I understand your concerns. I'm sorry, I probably shouldn't even be talking. But
It's,
I'm talking as Joe citizen. I'm Joe the plumber, right? And this building has to be safe. It has to work with the people that are here, and it has to serve the best interests of the general public. And we're gonna design to that standard.
yeah, and our goal as a committee, so is to provide the best facility planning for not just the police department, but the entirety of the municipal staff that works out of this building. And part of that is bringing facility up to modern standards. And
Yeah.
currently, we aren't there.
Yes.
And I'll be the first one to admit that we're not there
Mhm.
with modern standards, and that impacts everyone who's in the building at all times. So that's really the goal of this committee, and anything around policy is not something that we can address or that we have the authority to address, but the police commission does. So I think that would be an appropriate place
Well, that may
for
be
you
the
to bring your
stated,
concerns.
that may be the stated goal of the committee. However, a majority was 24 votes for specifically the most important goal being increasing community policing facilities. That was in the minutes, I think, the last meeting or the meeting
Oh.
before.
That was just a poll to see where people, that was not,
The people on this board, right?
but that was not 24 people voting.
No,
No,
just
it
24 distributed votes, 7 votes per person.
Right, it was, yes.
However-
And so there were people here that voted, everybody voted differently. And so,
Sure,
and just because that was just a guidance for us as a committee, it is not a decision-making
It
tool.
was a temperature taking.
It was just, yes, it was just general guidance for the committee to see where people were going and where people's interests were.
and where people's interests are is towards
Yes.
community policing.
Right,
Yes.
but ultimately, this body does not make any decisions. I think that that's critical for everybody to know in the public. This body makes recommendations, and the city council will be making those decisions. So I think that that's also critical. So they're just recommendations coming out of this committee, no matter what.
And why recommend further policing?
I don't know what this committee is going to decide. So we're in the very preliminary stages. And we just finished a needs study to find out what we need. And now we're meeting with an architectural firm who's gonna help us figure out the building and the space needs of the building. And ultimately, I can't predetermine how this committee is going to vote and what this committee is going to move forward or recommend. I really can't, because we're not there yet. Yeah, but I encourage you to come back and keep listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something to the first woman that was speaking, where she was a little confused about 110 versus, that's important, because if she's saying that, other people are thinking the same thing. So that really needs to go out exactly how many more people we are looking at. Because there's other people that are thinking, my goodness, now they're going up to 110, they got 64. So whoever is doing,
It's in the matrix study to the exact numbers.
but people are not, that's almost a PR that needs to go out to the public to let them know.
We'll work with,
This is a talking point.
yeah, we'll work with Monty, and make sure it's clear in the information that's sent out.
Good job.
Right, that is really critical, because that is very confusing, because people see a number in 64 and they say, well, that's the number of police, but they don't realize that we have a lot of civilian employees as
Right.
well. So,
It's clarify that the increase in staffing overall is this. How many police officers, how many non-uniform,
yes,
non-uniform staff?
exactly, because I think most of the recommendations were for non-uniform staff, because it was, yeah, looking at dispatch mostly, which serves not just police, but also fire
Yes, and DPW.
and DPW, yeah, so it's critical.
I'm sorry, that also includes the fire department and DPW
Yes,
in that 100 and,
no, the
Dispatching.
dispatch serves
Dispatchers
more than
serve
just
alright,
the police
more than-
department. So all your ambulance calls
Yep.
go through dispatch, so I think most people don't realize that's not just a police function, so that's important as well.
thank you.
Yes. All right, is there,
Will we adjourn?
can I get a motion, yeah?
You got it?
Is everybody on Zoom?
There's no one on
There was
Zoom that I saw
nobody, it was,
earlier.
Monty was on there.
It doesn't count.
Sorry, Monty. No public comment from you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.